joining, which is good. Okay, so some of what I go through you may already know, but I just want to cover some of the basics just as a refresher, really. We're talking about security and access. Addy, when he comes on, he's going to talk about single sign-on later, because I know some clients want to use or have been using single sign-on to avoid the effort of being able to sign on or having to sign on 2 or 3 times a different app. So he'll talk to that. I'm already signed in, so the important aspect of looking at your screen when you sign in is who you sign in as. I'm signed in as a system administrator. So basically, I have full access to everything. You need one person in your organization to be the system administrator, because that person can control what we call the roles. So it's important that you have at least one person that can do that. I'm going to be system admin, as you can see. So there's a couple of ways of getting to the role setting. One is through security. Another area that you may or may not be using is the search bar. So if you just type in roles, it takes you to any number of pages related to roles. So rather than keep trying to navigate through the menu settings, this is good for anything you want to go and find. Just go straight to roles. Out of the box, we give you a few roles. Admin, full access, will give you employee self-service, HR manager, and then you can create your own. So depending on your policy internally for security, and also the way your system or your company is structured, you may want to add additional roles for that. Let's take a look at what a role looks like. So if we click on HR manager, go to the right here, and okay, so within the role, this is HR manager. So what this is telling me is the HR manager has full access to all employees across all divisions. If you wanted to have a divisional manager or department manager, create a role called department manager, don't list all the employees. And now you can say, okay, I only want this role to look at those that are in the division, the employees in the division, or the department, or the sub-department. So the way that's quite useful is if you wanted a manager only to see their employees in a division or a department, set them up as that, and then restrict their access just to those employees. So that allows them to come in and manage their employee information and not have access to anybody else. So again, we've made this quite granular. And bearing in mind, there's over what we call pages. There's over 300 pages in our application. So there's a lot of areas that you can get granularity on. So we're going to say this person can list all employees, and they've got access to all divisions. This is obviously a demo system. So if you've got multiple divisions, these are typically companies within your group. We see divisions used a lot, but that may or may not be the case for you. And what departments do you want to allow this particular role to have? And again, just check we uncheck that. You can see that I can say, okay, I don't want this individual to have access to information technology or the front office or housekeeping if it's in a hotel. So again, it's pretty granular. In addition to that, you can assign tasks, company tasks, employee tasks. So what task, and these are the tasks you should have already created. We've got some out of the box, but you may have created within your own setup. What task would you like this particular person or this particular role to have? And here you can check on or check off what they can and can't see when it comes to tasks. Pages, same thing. Now, page is an important one. Think of that more as a menu structure as well. So this particular individual, if we look at payroll, what you can do with payroll, and I'm seeing it more and more now, as you know, for those of you that run payroll, there are 6 steps to the payroll, and we're actually going to be covering that in a future webinar. But steps 1 through 3 are normally the administration overhead of, importing hours, uploading gratuities, commissions, bonuses. Those are steps 1 and step 2. Step 3 is to do a review of the payroll. You send that review off to financial controller, whoever it may be, who then gets approval, and then you can come back and do steps 4 and 5. What I've actually seen more and more is that you can create a role to do step 1 through 3 and not step 4, 5, and 6. And the reason you may want to do that is 4, 5, and 6 is actually finalizing the payroll and then actually sending out the bank files, running the bank ACH files, etc. So you may want to hand that over to 2 different roles, but this gives you the option to do that. admin overhead 1, 2, and 3, financial controller to finalize it, and actually create the ACH files. So that's a good example of assigning pages. Other areas you could do, you may or may not allow them to deactivate an employee. You may or may not allow them to create self-service. So all of these you need to sort of go through. I've seen customers make a little matrix and say, okay, what roles are going to do what? And then you can come in here and simply update them. Self-service, this is the employee self-service. What do you want the employees to see when they log into their self-service portal? Again, we're going to cover self-service separately in a future webinar. But you may not have very many work permit holders, so you can take immigration out and they won't see that as an option. And again, you can turn these on and off. You may not want them to see the pay stub, or you do. So that's a pretty good way of deciding who has what roles and what they can do with them. If we look into the login providers, sorry, let's go back to security. When you get to this top level, so you've now got your security roles. This is what they can do at a high level. So it's a quick review. Under user management, this is where you can actually get a list down to the page level, if you will, of who has what access. It's a little bit slow this morning. Adi, I don't know if you want to jump in. Is there or Palo, anything I've missed during that overview? If not, I'll just carry on.
Sounded good.
Okay. All right. So here are your username. Typically, you're in an organization, you'll need an employee ID. So, and also a username for them to log in. So this would be their username, what role they have, what type they have, if you will, what the role they are, whether it's administrator, self-service, etc. So it's an easy way to just to come here and someone says, okay, well, what access does Graham have? And you can toggle these on and off to actually give yourself a listing of who's got system admin access based on the role. Show me my employees, etc. And then your security roles report that you could actually export if you need to. Similar sort of report, except you can actually run the page roles as well. So this will actually define which pages they've got. This becomes a pretty big report. As you can see, there's 97 pages here because it's showing you each page and who's got access to those pages. So that's pretty much security roles. So as I said, the first thing, make sure you've got someone that has full access to everything, and then create your roles based on access to the system and what they can and can't see. So if you've said to someone they don't have payroll, they'll never see the payroll option. Where I said before, just restrict it to 1 through 6, then you'll only see 1 through 3, and that person wouldn't see 4, 5, and 6. So it's a pretty easy way of controlling who does what. Do we have any questions on that before I move on to security policies? No? Okay. Security policies. This is normally dictated by your IT guys in terms of their policy. Out of the box, this is what we have as our standard, but you can change this at any time. And again, the system administrator would be able to change this, no one else. So the password age, what we're saying is after 90 days, you have to enter a new password. If that's 120 or 180 or 30 days, again, it's whatever your policy is in terms of your password. Notification basically says within 14 days of 90 days, I would get a notice to say my password's coming up for renewal. Enforced password history basically means I can't, for a certain number of days, I cannot use the same password. We stop people basically changing it once and then going back and changing it to the one they had previously just because they want to use the same password for everything. So we've got a good enforcement policy there. Complexity, you need another level of access to do that, but basically we're enforcing those particular characters that have to be in the password. And you've got 8 characters, 1 upper, 1 lower. If you wanted to simplify that, we don't recommend it. Again, it's your policy. You can go in and change those those complexity areas. Any addition to that, Addy?
Yeah, well, in case anybody was wondering what are those funny characters under the regex patterns, I'm happy to answer. Basically, that it's a pattern that is used. It's a technical thing to enforce the complexity. So within those characters, it's telling the system, hey, you need to have, these many small characters, these, it needs to have uppercase, it needs to have special characters. So yeah, I mean, there's a helpful link. Graham, if you click on the top blue book at the top, in case somebody wants to play around with it. So I think all the way down, we have included a link on, just in case, you want more complexity or less complexity, or for the complexity to match, maybe, your local IT folks have got a different complexity that, hey, it needs to be at least 10 characters, right? So how do you do that? So yeah.
Cool.
Right.
So once you've created the roles, how do you assign them? You can do it in bulk, where you can assign those roles in bulk, or you can go to individual employees. But under profile, go down to security. This is the employee level. So our friend Crispy Bacon, in terms of what his role is employee self-service. So the only thing that Chris can do is log in, and he can look at the self-service portal and nothing else. As an administrator, you could change that. You could say, well, actually, Chris has now been promoted. He's now a manager, so we'll give him manager role access. And anything that you set up in the role for manager would be applied to Chris at this point. So again, you can do it in bulk. Typically, for a new client, we'll do an upload. If they've got many employees to put up, we can then assign those roles in bulk. But as you've set them up once, and then if people change and come and go, you can actually change those roles here. That's basically how you assign them, and you can also assign the passwords when they come in, etc., for that role as well. So basically, that's how they do that. And just as a reminder, because I always tend to think it's a pretty neat one, you can actually open anything in a new leak. So we can actually go to security here. Then we can go to another option here, and we can go back to security. And it's just a way of basically switching between the security roles. If you need to remind yourself, well, what does a manager actually do? What does that manager have access to? You could come in and take a look in terms of what they can and can't do. And this particular manager can only list employees in the same department as the logged on user. So it's a fairly limited role. So if we change them to manager, that's actually what you would get. Okay, any questions around that? If not, Addy, I just wanted could you talk to the issue of single sign-on and multi-factor authentication and the options are available there, which we're getting a lot more questions coming through help desk on that.
Yeah, sure. Do I share my screen, or you can?
Well, you can ask me to point to things. I can do that for you.
Okay, sure. Yeah. If you go to the security tab there, yeah. And let's click on login providers. Yep. Okay, great, thanks. Yeah. Anybody in the audience using single sign-on? Just a quick question, just so I know. Or anybody, are anybody planning to kind of implement single sign-on for the applications that the users are using in the organization?
Looks like we got a couple that popped up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah. So this is no different. So there are obvious security benefits of enabling single sign-on. I mean, one of them is obviously you don't have to remember another set of login and password to log on to another application, right? That ends up the user writing their passwords on sticky notes and pasting it on their monitor. So yeah, just to avoid that. So that's obviously the benefit. and you have centralized control of those logins. So if somebody leaves or something, then you just have to worry about disabling one login. So traditionally, Blue Bison HRM had the option that could you make it a little bit bigger? It says built-in row 2. So that was the only option available. Yep. And so what this means is the system has its own authentication mechanism. And you saw the security policies that Graham was talking about, and it implements those. So it is similar to your Active Directory or Windows login, right? Now, recently, I mean, I think from version 5.10, we added the option of having more than the built-in option. And you have, so if you go back to login providers, Graham, and just click on add new, and just click on add, yeah. And so you see on the drop down, if you could just, so you see those are the two other options apart from built-in that we're supporting. So the first one is the Windows Active Directory. So I'm guessing everybody's familiar with that. Basically what this does is if you select that, it'll ask you to provide it details of your domain controllers, which is kind of the server which you use to log on to your computers, right? So you type in your Windows login and ID. So once you've given it the Windows domain controller information, you'd go back and change the authentication mechanism for the user or at the role level. And what happens is now if John Doe belongs to, is set to be authenticated using Windows Active Directory, then he needs to type in his Windows login and the Windows password when he's trying to log on to HR Manager as well. And the second one there is OpenID Connect. And so that one is basically supports cloud type of authentication. So we see an increased move for most organizations towards Office 365 and other providers on the cloud. So this gives you a mechanism to connect to your cloud service provider authentication mechanism. The only requirement here is they need to support the OpenID Connect. So OpenID Connected is like a fancy word for a modern authentication system. Okay, it used to be SAML and other federated logins. So those are getting very complex to set up. So those are getting replaced by these more generally accepted and open protocols. And this is basically a schema to get you authenticated, right? So, and as long as your provider and Office 365, which is very popular, does support OpenID Connect and OAuth 2.0. So we need some details, as you can see on the field, and we've got some instructions and how to get these details from Office 365. So basically you have to go to your Office 365 and set up and basically your Azure AD infrastructure and set up a new application and make sure, so that Azure trusts Blue Bison HRM when it makes a request. So it's kind of a two-way configuration. So you need to configure it both at the Azure AD level, Active Directory level, and also on the Blue Bison level. So first you will configure it on the Azure AD, get the details, and you kind of put it in here. So once you do that, then next time you log on to Blue Bison, you need to put in your Office 365 username. And if your Office, the other advantage is a lot of people are now enabling two-factor, using their mobile phones or an app. And that way you can leverage the same two-factor infrastructure for Blue Bison as well, without having to set up a dedicated infrastructure just for Blue Bison.
Yeah, I did have a question come through about what someone spotted this field here. So presumably
right.
that
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah. So, okay. So that was login providers. What is enable two-factor authentication? So this is at the role level, what I was talking about. So we have our own. So this is our built-in two-factor, okay? Not to be confused with what I just spoke about. So suppose you don't care about Office 365 or any other provider, and you want to implement two-factor authentication using the built-in logins. This is one way to do this. So what happens is if you enable it, as you can see, the current provider we have is basically emailing you a code, which is like a one-time password. So if you enable it and then you assign this role to a user, let's say John Doe, and John Doe tries to log in, what will happen is they'll type in the username and they'll hit put their password in, and then they will be asked to put in a code, which has been emailed to their verified email address. So basically, it secures the system because now not only you'll have to know the password, and if somebody has guessed your password, they also need access to your email because it generates a one-time password and sends it to your email. So you need these two pieces of information to log in if you enable that.
Yeah, it's pretty similar, to banking online. I'm sure all of us have done that. Butterfield, especially if you haven't logged in for a while, it'll actually send you a code to an email. Then you need the code, and you basically copy and paste it into there to be able to give access. So you don't have to enable it for everybody. I think that's important. But if you've got particular user roles that you want them to have two-factor, just make sure that you check that box. I've seen it used for what we call non-employees. As you may or may not know, but you can set up roles for a non-employee. That's someone, typically third parties. They may be internal, external auditors coming in to take a look, or you may have a contracted HR service provider or an outsourced payroll provider. They can be non-employees, but you want to add another layer of security, you can lay on that two-factor authentication for them. Okay.
And also for like remote access, right? So
Right.
if you have like people with the COVID and everything, right? A lot of people accessing it remotely, right? So especially if you have exposed the application to the internet, we do recommend that you turn it on. It just adds that extra layer of security.
Okay. Great. Thanks. So before we move on to any questions in general, just as a reminder for everybody, the best place to get information is going to be the portal. And I'll ask again, make sure you've got access to the portal. If you haven't, or if you've forgotten your username, you should be able to get a password sent to you. But if for some reason you can't get in, let us know. Just send a ticket to BB support at software.com, and we'll resend you and reset you up again so you can access it. But once you're in the knowledge base, this is where all the webinars are going to go. There's a lot of information in there. So if you want to type in, roles, user roles for 510 and over, then you've got a good overview of everything that we've just covered for you here. So that'll be available to you to see. So again, we always like to obviously provide you with some self-help areas, and we've got, I don't know, over 1,000 articles in here, so it's a good place to go.
I have a couple questions that have come in.
Yep.
The first one is, are there any restriction on the number of roles?
I don't think so, Eddie. I don't know if you can talk to that. I think you can have as many as you want, right?
Yeah, there's no restriction. You can, just.
Yeah. So it kind of ties back to the question we get quite often with new clients coming on. How many administrators can I have? Well, you can have as many as you like, and it comes back to roles, right? You can have as many. The only thing I would say from a security point of view, you kind of want to limit those that have access to a lot of features and functions. Again, from a control point of view, I personally wouldn't want more than one system administrator on here. Two max. One could be from IT, one could be operations. But after that, I wouldn't recommend. I've seen it. Someone give everybody full access. Well, that's kind of an issue potentially. Although we do audit trails, we do audit reports. You'll see who's been doing what. Just in case you've got issues, around the roles you've applied to certain users, then obviously that opens you up a little bit. So I wouldn't recommend any more than one, if not two, system administrators. But Sophie, yeah, there's no limit to the number.
Okay, cool. And then the next question is just around what happens if a user forgets their password?
There's a couple of things. When you're logging in, there's a forgot user password option. And then with your verified email address, you'll get a notice automatically to actually reset that password. So we try and take care of that without you having to call, for help desk or support. The only time I've seen that not work is if someone hasn't had a verified email address. Then it won't send it because it doesn't believe it's verified. So the whole point of doing email verification when you set people up is the security layer, that you want to make sure that person is truly who he says he is or she is, and that email is in fact the email that it should be going to. So providing they've got the verification done as part of that onboarding process with new employees, then forgetting a password shouldn't be a major issue.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and does anyone else have any other questions that we want answered at this stage? No. Okay. Graham, do you think that's it? Do you want to cover anything else, or are you happy?
I think that's it. We said 30 minutes, and I kind of want to keep it to that. So we're just coming up to the bottom of the hour. So as you said, we'll get this recording available on the knowledge base, and anybody that registered but couldn't join, we'll get that sent to them automatically. And I think we've got another one coming up in a couple of weeks. So we'll keep sending the invites out, and hopefully you're finding these 30-minute sessions useful.
Perfect. Thanks so much, everyone, for attending, and thanks, Adi and Pallavi.
So thanks for organizing. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. Bye.